Thank you very much, Yakuta. Um, Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, um, I bring you warm greetings from the Center for Human Rights at the University of Pretoria. It is such an honor for me to make a contribution today to this very important discussion. And thanks to my predecessors, particularly Abdul Salam, who has really narrated what the issue is. Today's discussion invites us to confront a very difficult but necessary question. How do we ensure that human rights protection are existing where access and visibility are constrained? So I can say, just to answer your last question, that we are indeed facing a crisis in Africa. And I think once we actually accept that, then we'll be able to go back to see what went wrong and how can we actually address the future. So the key questions today that we need to look at is how do we ensure human rights protection and accountability in contexts where access is restricted, where visibility is limited, and where civic space is constrained. And I think my predecessor has already narrated some of the challenges that we find in Western Sahara. And of course, Western Sahara is a case study where we can be able to see that persistent allegation of violations, limited independent monitoring, as well as restricted international scrutiny. And she has already spoken about the fact that Morocco is not a party to the African Charter. So what do we do as human rights practitioners? How do we ensure that the Kingdom of Morocco is actually um, uh, respecting and promoting human rights? How do we do that in these occupied Western Sahara territories? So it does exemplify such contexts where allegation persists, but monitoring remains very limited. So at the center of our analysis here lies the African Charter. We are celebrating the 45th year of the African Charter having been adopted, but we are still talking about the same issue, the issue of Western Sahara, the right to self-determination. What is it that is missing? I think the conversation must still continue, even at this very day. And these are spaces where we need to discuss these issues, because at the very epicenter of the problem are human beings, and how do we ensure that human beings their rights are protected and they are promoted? So the African Charter basically guarantees this comprehensive set of civil and political rights, which are actually essential to civic space and accountability. So the African Charter on Human People's Rights provides a core legal framework. When we look at civil and political rights, we look at Article 9 that deals with expression and information. We look at Article 10 that deals with association. We look at Article 11 that deals with freedom of assembly. We also look at Article 12 that deals with the freedom of movement. So within the civic space, it is important to note that the African Commission has made it very clear that freedom of expression is foundational to democratic accountability. Similarly, it has also been affirmed that civil society must operate without any interference. And what we saw in this particular session, where that interference was actually a sin, it's something that we need to speak out against. And I think this is a space where we need to discuss all these issues. So restrictions in Western Sahara therefore raise serious charter concerns. The risk that we have actually identified in this context is that when you restrict journalists, you are also restricting information. When you are limiting civil society, you are also constraining any meaningful discussion that can actually provide meaningful solutions to the problem. And when you constrain human rights defenders, you are even making it worse because people are not going to be able to speak, yet they are speaking for those who cannot speak themselves. So within the African Commission on Human and People's Rights case law, we have media rights agenda versus Nigeria, where the issue of freedom of expression, as well as was found to have been the foundation of democracy in any given space. In the case of the Law Office of Ghazi Suleiman versus Sudan, that case spoke about the protection of civil society, which we are still talking about today. So now, how do we protect from abuse and detention? The Commission has clarified this issue that states must not only refrain from violations, but they must also actively protect individuals. Again, in this particular case, we are arguing that African states must actually come up to speak out around the issue of Western Sahara in order to ensure that the people are protected, their human rights are protected as well as promoted. So failure to investigate abuses, again, may itself constitute a violation of the African Charter. So the relevant charter rights will be Article 5 that speaks about the freedom from torture, Article 6 that speaks about the freedom from arbitrary detention, and Article 7 that speaks about the right to fair trial. So again, we see that there has been a jurisprudence of the African Commission around these issues. And the key principles is that states have a positive obligation to ensure that violations are prevented, to ensure that abuses are investigated, and also to ensure that remedies are provided in any given space. So when it comes to the charter also recognizes people's rights in particularly, which is particularly important in the case of Western Sahara. The right to self-determination, which I spoke about, which is actually central to the legal and political discourse on Western Sahara. And the unique features of the charter are found in the right to self-determination, which is found in Article 20, the right to natural resources, and your right to choose how you want to use those natural resources, which is found in Article 21, and the right to development, which is found in Article 22. This is actually very novel when it comes to the African Charter jurisprudence. So I just want to just speak about Article 1, which is, I believe, very critical as I head towards my conclusion. Article 1 is very critical in that it actually confirms that states cannot evade responsibility due to political or territorial complexity. Where civil space is restricted, the rights to protect becomes even more urgent. And the states must respect these rights, they must protect these rights, and they must also fulfill these rights. These obligations even apply in disputed territories, as in the case of Western Sahara. It also applies even where political complexities exist. And I think this is very, very important. The African Charter is also reinforced by international law, which emphasizes the protection of defenders and prohibits reprisals against those engaging in human rights mechanisms. It is important to note that we have the ACHPR, which is also a very important tool for us to make use of, the Convention Against Torture, the UN Declaration on Human Rights Defenders. So this is also very important beyond just the African Charter itself. So we also see that dichotomy that even if we are not able to be effective within the African human rights system, there is also another system which can actually assist us in addressing the issue of the people of Western Sahara. So it is important that we should also ensure that there is accountability, and accountability requires access. If there is no access, we will not have any accountability. And also the independent monitoring is important, because without the independent monitoring, violation risks are actually hidden, normalized, and also not addressed. And it's important that as we continue with these discussions, we reflect upon this. We also know that there's been a resolution 2756 of the UN Security Council, as well as resolution 2797. Again, these resolutions are talking about the need to continue with the negotiations and the issue of Western Sahara being put on the table. So this discussion is one of those where we need to continue with these discussions at this particular level. Again, I want to also